Hey, everybody. I put off starting a podcast for over a year because I didn't think I could figure it out or afford it until I found a website called Buzzsprout. They took care of the complicated work for me. Buzzsprout helped me through every aspect of launching my podcast and making it sound and look great. They have tools and tips on buying gear and setting it up, as well as loading your podcast onto popular directories including Spotify, Apple, Google, and Amazon with just one click. Not only that, Buzzsprout can show you how to get paid for your podcast, which is what I'm doing right now. And as an added promo, if you sign up for a paid account, Buzzsprout will give you an Amazon gift card worth $20. So what are you waiting for? Click the link in the show notes to let Buzzsprout know that I sent you and start launching your podcast today. Hey everybody, got the munchies but don't want to miss the game or pause the movie? Or need to buy some groceries but have no time to get to the supermarket? Your time is valuable. Don't waste it standing in line at the cashier or sitting in traffic. Order food online from the comfort of your own home with Instacart. They hand-select products you love from stores right in your own neighborhood. Not only that, Instacart is fast. They can deliver right to your door in as little as 1 hour. So get all the food you would normally buy, including fresh produce and eggs, with Instacart. Setting up an account is also fast and easy. Click on the link in the show notes to let Instacart know I sent you. Don't run out of food or miss a minute of the game at your Super Bowl party. Click the link in the show notes and let Instacart supply your party with any food you and your guests crave. Is actually my 6th episode.
Should I just put them on?
Yeah, go for it. And that's your mic.
Right, okay.
And you can get right down on it.
Okay.
It won't. There's no feedback or anything like that. Well, the closer you get to it, the more you get like that sort of radio voice sound.
Yeah, right. Okay.
The farther you are away from it, the more of the room that the mic picks up.
Okay, sure. Can I make these a little looser?
Sure.
Or, I'm not sure.
I think you. Yeah. Maybe that's
a big head, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know. They're kind of.
Maybe this is the one.
They don't go totally over the ear, which is kind of annoying. You don't have to wear them if you don't want to. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Well, it's kind of fun. Maybe.
It's kind of nice because you have like my
my only major concern is here now. I asked for coffee because I thought I would, but actually it's been such a hell of a week. I'm actually thinking that something to drink would be good.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you want to talk about that during. Tell me how that goes. Is this what is the name of your podcast again? Are we already starting this?
We're on.
You can use whatever you like. Is what you do. Yeah.
Well. Okay, so I can talk about the podcast if you want. It's called the Cigawi podcast, and that's an acronym. It stands for Can I Get a Word In? Cigawi.
Okay.
Can I get a word in? Like you're
cool.
in a conversation,
right?
Which kind of explains the podcast. You know, it's about conversation.
Yeah, sure.
It's not about one thing. Of course. With you and I, we're going to talk about Americans living in Berlin. We're going to talk about music. We're going to do a deep dive on your new album and stuff like that.
Sure, cool.
But the guy who was sitting there before you is a U.S. Marine.
Okay.
And we chatted up for almost 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, I think I have only an hour max. Okay.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Do you have to get back?
Yeah, I do.
Oh man. Okay, so this is going to be a two-parter then.
Two-parter.
Yeah. Because most of the podcasts are 2.5 or 3 hours.
Really?
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes, and we'll get into it.
What time is it? 1:30. I think 3 I should bust. Okay. I should really bust out. Okay. Yeah. Good.
You can get right down. You see how your levels are?
It's date night in my house. It's date night.
Friday night is date night for me too.
No, it's not Friday night being a date night. It's rarely date night. It just happens to be that we're finally having.
Okay. So yeah, see your levels there. You're on the bottom. You're in the red, the bottom one, and see mine on the top.
I see. Sure. Yeah. Because you're closer. Is that what it is?
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know. Maybe.
There you go. Yeah. There's sort of and you can raise or lower this thing right here if you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually what I'm doing is I keep stuff like this just in because it keeps the podcast really organic.
Yeah, sure. I like it. Yeah.
I actually did have to cut some stuff out from the guy from the Marine because he ended up saying some stuff he shouldn't have.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. Sure.
like as far as security goes.
And do you do this?
I totally cut it out. So
Yeah.
if anybody's listening there from military or
All right.
or
Sure. I understand.
Anybody, yeah. So yeah.
Good.
So,
Well, cool. Well,
yeah,
I'm so glad to see you. It's been like a good while.
Yeah.
And really appreciate the invitation. And it's always fun to come talk about being an American in Berlin and in Europe and it's always interesting. Yeah, I think it's fun to talk about with fellow Americans. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, just to finish up about the podcast. So, I mean, basically my idea with the podcast was, I suddenly have like some time. I'm not learning a lot of new roles, but I'm still studying voice. But, the voice, I can't practice 4 hours a day.
Of course.
So, yeah, so I study my language. I work on my voice a little bit. I'm taking voice lessons, trying to expand. Do whatever you want there.
Yeah.
Adjustment. And yeah, I mean, I just thought I could do this podcast, and it's just, there's so much in the news about everything. People are talking about everything, about music, about politics, about current events, about COVID, everything, and I just wanted to create a platform where people could come on, interesting people, hopefully,
You hope.
with something to say. But the first couple ones are like friends of mine, stuff like that, and I'm totally cool with that. They're still interesting people, and we just discuss perspectives. That's all.
Right.
Yeah. So
Cool. Super.
Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun. So, and one thing I've realized since I started it was how lonely I have been.
Yeah.
Not to get too sentimental, but since this pandemic started. My girlfriend and I were dating. We were sort of just new when the pandemic sort of started, but we were able to stay together. And she has been awesome. I mean, she has been really my lifeline during this whole time. But what I missed was the interaction with like colleagues, because that suddenly just dried up to zero.
Sure.
It's dried up to zero. Even the few jobs that I did have, people were like, well, we better not socialize
Right.
outside of what we actually have to. So yeah, it's like basically you get out of rehearsal and you're basically in quarantine, not officially, but to stop the chance of the whole cast getting COVID, you basically quarantine yourself. So
Right.
I really missed that, and this is one thing that this podcast has really helped me in that sense, because suddenly I have this opportunity to sit down with people, hopefully without a time constraint, and we can just sort of relax, and people can say whatever they want. I can, we can respond, we can have these perspectives, and it's, there's no time limit. There's no like sort of pressure, and, everybody's like vaxxed who comes in, and everybody, we talk about that sometimes, but anyway.
Yeah.
So that's that.
Perfect. Cool.
Yeah.
Great.
So I got
Nice.
a coffee. You got a coffee.
Yeah. Central Perk. Yeah. Nice. Well, cool. It's good to see you. And it's nice. It's actually a nice day for a change. You can actually see a little sunlight.
Oh my gosh. It's been so gray in Berlin, and suddenly today there was like,
Yeah. A break. A break.
the choir singing through the sun bursting through the clouds. So when did you move to Berlin?
I moved here November of 2011.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So not long after I did, just about a year. It was August 2010.
Okay.
That's when I moved to Berlin.
Yeah, November 2011, we moved here from New York City, and rather direct. Thankfully, the moving force was I won this position at Deutsche Oper Berlin, but it was only the last year of a contract, so it was like 1 year contract.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great. It got me into the system and into the city with the visas for us and everything, and then it just worked really well. Just kind of kept going from there.
Mm-hmm. You like this photo?
It's nice. Yeah.
I took this photo.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I actually took this photo.
It's looking west. Yeah.
That's right. Just coming out of the subway, the U-Bahn there, and
which is much nicer now because there is an U-Bahn there.
Yeah, really beautiful. So, Yeah, we were talking about just before I clicked record. We were talking about how we first met, and I think it was City Opera.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you remind me of that. It must have been. I was there for like 04, 5, 6, something like this. I was like a regular assistant of Manahan and sometimes others.
Right.
That was a great place to be at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, for young singers, young conductors, young pianists, directors, stage managers. Remember Samantha Green?
Yep.
She's an old friend of mine.
I'm friends with her on Facebook, so I see her posts.
I miss her. She's really fun and sarcastic and clever. Yeah. All those people, so many people from those days. That was such a great company to be in and to be a part of because, so many of us got our first kind of start with a named company there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Paul Kellogg was the artistic director at that time. Robin Thompson, I lost track of where he went. I thought he was maybe out west for a little while and then came back east.
I think he's in New York City now still.
He's still in New York?
Yeah. I've not seen him for 6-7 years, but we keep in touch a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you there when Corey Lippiello was there?
Sure.
Shout out to Corey.
Sure, yeah.
I think she's at
Santa Fe
or San Fran?
As a dramaturg or something? Yeah, is that the same? No, it's not the same person I'm thinking of. Thinking of Corey
Ellison.
Ellison, yes.
Corey Ellison. Shout out to Corey Ellison.
Right.
She was awesome too. Corey Lippiello, she was Robin's assistant.
Okay,
so she was doing a lot of
yeah.
artistic administration. I don't want to say she's at one of the big companies. I want to say Chicago.
Okay.
Lyric Opera Chicago.
That sounds right. I remember she was very cool.
Yeah, she was very cool.
I always had to call in.
Always organized and really, really sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember did you ever, I know you sang a lot of things there, but I was an associate conductor, so I was really a cover conductor, like full-time. Like when I was working there, I was the cover on a show at a time usually. And
I think you probably conducted some rehearsals.
Oh, a lot of rehearsals
that I was in.
Yeah, probably.
So I did Traviata there. Mm-hmm. I did Bohème.
Sure, I was on a Bohème.
Yeah, the Jim Robinson Bohème.
Yeah, I was on Butterfly a few times.
Okay.
And I was on Candide, and I was on that great piece, Dialogues of the Carmelites.
Okay.
Remember with, can't I think of her name at the moment? I know her so well. Great mezzo, Israeli mezzo.
Oh, not Joyce Castle.
No. I'll think of it in a bit.
Jen Hines?
No, sorry, I can't think of it at the moment. She's great. I think she lives in France now.
Okay.
That was really a great production. What you mentioning Corey Lippiello reminds me to talk about this for a second because
do it.
I just thought it was so interesting there compared to here. A few times when I first came to Europe, I assisted a few big productions, the Paris Opera and of course the Deutsche Oper and a few times I assisted Christoph Eschenbach at the Vienna State Opera. And it's just so different. They don't book a cover conductor. They don't even really book an assistant. I was at the Paris Opera, they do book an assistant conductor, whoever the conductor wants and such. But you're not necessarily the person they call if things get heated,
Same thing is true with the cover.
Right.
Yeah, if they do a cover, it's not necessarily if the guy goes down, they're gonna find a star if they can.
Yeah, perhaps. Well, we never had the chance to see that at New York City Opera. I don't think any conductor ever jumped in at the last second, at least like my 4 or 5 years there. But I remember I always thought it was interesting here. It's so different because at New York City Opera, it was like there was a real plan of action. Like if it was the day of a show and I was this associate conductor on that production, they would call George Manahan or somebody first thing that morning, 9 in the morning. He said, Garrett, George, are you well and alive and going to conduct tonight, right? And he would say, yes, always. Unfortunately. he would laugh at that. But anyway, and then they would say, Garrett, so it seems like it's fine. You don't have to be in the house, but I know the contract said I had to be within like 1 mile of the theater. And I had to be able to get there in 15 minutes or something like that.
Okay. Maybe it was different for singers or something like that. The rule with the singers was you could be anywhere on Manhattan.
Wow.
They didn't want you to be like stuck in a bridge or a tunnel.
Yes.
Trying to get to the theater. But if you were anywhere in Manhattan, so yeah, I lived in Inwood, which is, Lincoln Center's 66th, and my apartment was like 200th Street.
Sure.
So I was technically still in Manhattan, but like pretty much the farthest you can get from Lincoln Center. So I was able to cover from there.
That's nice. Well, I think it was different for us. I think ours said you had to be within a mile or two, something like this, and on Manhattan. So I lived at Hell's Kitchen during those years, and it worked out fine. But that was just strange. And I just thought it was always interesting to me how they were so specific about it. You always called in, you always checked. They always said, Garrett, he's fine. I just talked to him, and everything's cool. So, but, we'll see you there tonight, or do you need a ticket, or are you going to be at your house, or where are you going to be? And they checked if they had the right number, et cetera. And just completely so different here. Because one time I went on a tour with the National Symphony Orchestra, Washington D.C. of Europe, like 10 different cities, and with Eschenbach, and I was like, they definitely considered me his cover, and I know I would have gone on if something really happened, unless, it could be that they would try to get some other star if they had time or whatever. But I mean, they were concerned. They were like. I shouldn't say that on your podcast, but anyway, it's too late. But
okay.
His health was great and everything, but they were just, an American orchestra is concerned about such things. They're like going to Vienna and they're going to Paris, they're going to all these places. They're like, we got to make sure, Whereas a European orchestra is just like, it'll be fine. We call somebody if we have to. And so I just thought it was such a different process that in the American orchestras really think about that. I guess maybe because the United States there's not a conductor on every street corner there is here.
That's right.
That's
right. I mean, you shake a tree in Berlin and,
a couple conductors fall.
12 opera singers and 3 conductors fall out of the tree. So.
That's funny.
Yeah. But, totally right. And then your Deutsche Oper, when you were at Deutsche Oper, that was a 1-year contract, you said?
Yeah.
And basically, did you just have to, cover every single production?
Well, not as much, actually. I was more like the person. They gave me a couple productions to conduct, and then there was,
nice.
There was always a few. There was basically all the new productions. I was kind of the conductor of all the rehearsals, unless the conductor happened to be there, but it didn't seem like there ever was. So I was usually, covering for the general music director, and then. So I just.
It takes a lot of courage to do a new production at Deutsche Oper.
Well, I was just, preparing all the rehearsals and just conducting everything, and kind of just guessing on tempi and just making what I thought were good choices. And,
right.
Yeah, and it was a great experience, a really great experience. I did a lot of that in the past too at New York City Opera. I did a lot of that because George is so cool. George Manhan's great to assist because, and all of us agreed because you got to really conduct a lot. And then also Dallas Opera, I was assistant for a couple of years, and I got to conduct a lot of rehearsals. And that's just super helpful for a young conductor, I think. And I also, of course, really a symphonic conductor just as much, and an operatic background is so important to have because you just have so much more flexibility, I'd say, learning to accompanying singers. And what's interesting, I think, about it for me is, sorry, it's changing the subject, but when you talk about accompanying singers, it's so interesting because, you really do the exact same thing when you're accompanying a concerto soloist. Exactly the same thing. And I think all the years of opera background just helps so much because your ear just automatically goes, oh, I just go along with them like this, and you don't fight it. Whereas if I think when I was a younger symphonic conductor and mostly focused on that more before the opera, you're more uncomfortable with that idea. Like you can just go along with something, Okay. But it's actually a really nice trait to have. I think it's a really nice trait to have as a musician to be able to collaborate really comfortably and relax in a relaxed manner. We're just like, oh, I like they do that a little differently than I would have thought, and that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about being a conductor as opposed to another musician, because I think people who listen to my podcast, they're not all musicians.
Sure.
So why do conductors often get the term maestro attached to what they do? And
that's a good question. I think it's more on the opera side, I must say.
Yeah.
Because I've conducted a lot of symphonic things. People don't call you a maestro as much. I was conducting a concert just a few days ago, and I think a couple of people referred me to maestro, but not in the orchestra. Not people in the orchestra, more like people that came back to stage to see me, or somebody that wrote me a note or something like this.
Right.
But I mean, it's what I always find about it is that, especially in the States, and I think here too, if you're really working in opera a lot, singers and I don't know, it's charming. Singers like to call you maestro, you know?
Yeah.
And also sometimes directors, stage directors and things. And it's, I don't think it's just a kind of a tradition more than anything else.
Yeah.
I try not to, I don't get caught up in it. You're like, whoa.
No, not the ego side of it. Not the ego side of it. But I mean, I guess what I'm trying to refer to is the responsibility you have. Because, you know, when you're in the pit, you usually have a light, you know, like a red light that goes off or a green light that comes on or some kind of lighted indication as to when you can start.
Sure.
And once you start, you are in control. Really, more. I mean, you're in control.
Yeah.
Period.
True.
Of how that performance goes.
I love that aspect.
I don't know if you ever dwell on this, but this is something I dwell on a lot because, like, we were chatting the other day that my dad is a conductor. You know, I mean, he's a music educator.
Sure.
You know, but he does a lot of conducting, and ever since I was a little kid, I mean, I saw him, you know, in conducting high school musicals and things like that. And it was always so interesting to me, even at a small age, I realized that, like, once he starts conducting, like, he's really in control. And as I got older, I started to realize that, especially, you know, being in Germany, when you do a long run of something, you often have many different conductors. You know, you might have the same singer cast, but different conductors. And maybe to the public, the changes might seem subtle. But to the singers, they're not subtle. You can really feel a tempo shift, a little bit faster or a little bit slower. You can feel a transition when there's a musical transition, and if it's sort of clunky or if it's sort of really smooth or if it sort of goes fast or slow, it sets, you know, those sorts of moments set up the drama for the whole opera. I guess I'm referring mostly to opera. And I mean, do you feel that, or is it just like you have a job to do and you? Yeah,
I mean, I think I used to feel that and worry about that and stuff, and I think I definitely see that as the responsibility. And I really, well, one thing when you brought this idea up, this topic up, I thought to myself, I always do enjoy very much that, you know, you open first night of an opera, of a new production or a Wiederaufnahme, a return of some kind of older production. It always feels like, I mean, that's a big deal for the whole cast and directors there and everybody, the whole company's all like buzzing, like, it's our opening night, you know, big deal.
Yeah.
And then but I always look forward to the second performance because by then everybody, like, usually stage director goes away, it becomes a little more chill, and it's like, okay, now I feel like, well, I'm gonna speak like an American, you know, it's like, this sucker's mine. It's like, you know, like now it's like, it kind of feels like it switches a little bit from being, you know, lots of times an opera feels very much these days, I would say for the 30 years at least, is like, feels very much like it's the stage director's world and land, you know?
Yes.
And when you get to the second performance, it starts to be, okay, the conductor and the singers, it's their thing now, you know? And it's not necessarily, sometimes it feels like it becomes a little bit more, the music can relax and the music can go and really become, maybe it can shine a bit more and can be focused on a bit more. I don't know, maybe of course that's my perspective as a conductor, you know?
Definitely the anxiousness sort of subsides, you know? And I mean, for me, it's true too. Like I look back on, like, especially an opening night, you know, where I thought, you know, I think, you know, that was out of character. Like, that wasn't as well as I could do this part or that part. And in the second performance, I'm going to improve on that. You know, and, you know, inevitably it was just because of, like, the high energy situation, you know, so once that sort of goes away, you do have a moment to sort of, like, reflect and fix things.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's an important part.
I mean, it's fun. It's just so fun when you get to that point, and especially it's fun when you have a lot of performances.
Yeah.
it's always a bummer. Sometimes, I'm sure you've done this in the States where you go to a company and you only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
That's always a bummer because you barely get into a role. And, the best thing about doing multiple performances, of course, is that the performances improve.
Yes.
And then you really get into it like, wow, that was spectacular.
Yes.
And that's one really nice thing about Europe, I find, because usually there are many more performances more often.
Yes.
Wait, it reminds me of one thing I wanted to say, though. Also, what I find about, we're both Americans. We're sitting here. Surely somebody in the States that's involved in opera will listen to this. But what I do find very interesting, and I think you'll laugh about this with me, is that, okay, you do an opera Carmen. I did a Carmen 4 years ago in the States in a nice bee house. And, and I did a Bohème and a very nice festival in the States, everybody knows the name of, like 4 years ago too. Both exactly the same situation, okay? You come in, there's 3 performances, and you're like, this is so fun. I'm staying in this hotel, and at breakfast I see all the singers, and we went and had tacos last night at this great place and whatever, and you're making music, you're having fun. It's kind of like a mini vacation. You're away from home and everything, and you're in the States again, and you live in Berlin. And that's always fun, working in this kind of place, in such a place. And then, but I'm just going to tell you how it is. As me as a conductor, there's like a manager of the company, whatever they're called, CEO, and then there's an artistic administrator of some with a fancier title these days, usually, and then there's the stage director, and there's a couple other people in the company involved, all watching it all, looking over. And somebody always comes over to me about 3 days before the opening. Maestro, I just wanted to let you know, we're seeing that scene with Michaela. I just thought her aria, and that one little part of her aria, it's just it only happens in the States. It's a little aria, maybe it's just a little bit slower than normal, not even very much. Maybe I shouldn't even mention it, and this kind of thing.
No, you shouldn't.
and I'm always like, okay, yes. And then there's a little worry about it more than is needed. And then you come back to Europe and you do an opera and you do 10 performances and everybody knows it's different than the last conductor and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Because there's 10 performances, and they did the opera last year too, and they're just glad you're here doing it again, and you're having fun, and it goes great.
Yeah.
And nobody worries about it. But I just find sometimes in the States, because unfortunately we don't have the ability in a lot of these companies to do many performances, sometimes only 2, that people are really concerned because they only do 3 operas a year, only 2 or 3 performances each. And it's so nice when you're freed up in Europe and you get to just perform and work, and nobody's worried about that because, we'll do it again next year too, or whatever,
I wonder if that's like a control issue when they comment. It might be.
You can see my look on my face.
Let's see.
I think there's some control issues sometimes in opera. Yes, of course.
Let's see if he'll do what I say, and if not, I won't recommend him for the next.
Maybe.
I won't say, well, what about Garrett?
Yes.
I'll say, what about blah 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 instead?
Yeah, maybe. But that's why it's nice to. Anyway, it's just a funny story.
Yeah, when you have a lot of performances, the production grows.
Yeah.
Especially when you have a really complex opera like Carmen. There's a lot of scenes. In Europe, they do it with dialogue instead of recitative that connect the musical scenes, which is very challenging for singers because we don't have like these acting chops.
Sure. There's a language chops sometimes too, of course.
Yeah,
it's tricky
exactly.
in French, of course. Yeah.
Exactly. Another one is Hoffmann. I do a lot of Hoffmann in Europe, and every production is different. They always want to do like, this is the Staatsoper Mainz version. This is the Weimar version. This is the Hamburg version.
Sure.
They always have to put each director always has to put their stamp on that because Hoffmann is one of those operas that just is. It's so sort of interchangeable.
Great piece.
Offenbach was alive when it was first produced, and when it was produced at the second theater, he had a whole new cast of singers because he couldn't bring the original troupe with him. He had to use the singers at the house. So he had to rewrite a lot of the arias. And that's why you have like these 2A, 2B, and you can like decide which version you want to do. I mean, there's arias in different keys. Have you worked on Hoffmann at all?
Not really, no. But I know it well.
Yeah.
Actually, I've worked on it at the Dallas Opera, but that was 12, 14 years ago, something like this.
Yeah, I mean, you buy like the shot Fassung, the shot version, and I mean, it's this thick, but it's this thick. A third of it is just the
text.
The alternate pieces.
Right.
You know,
right.
like the septet. Sometimes the septet is in, sometimes it's out. You know, it just depends on how you sort of arrange the numbers. You know, there's even versions of it where the Antonia and Giulietta scene are switched. So Antonia ends up being the third of the three ladies as opposed to Giulietta.
Yeah, I've heard about that before.
Yeah. It's just crazy stuff like that. So anyway, yeah. You mentioned something I wanted to touch on, and that is accompanying a singer as opposed to accompanying an instrumental soloist. With a singer, you have a story, because the singer has words. And with instrumentalists, you often don't have any context. So, for example, I mean, it's a little easier, a lot. Like I noticed with your album, you had. I'm going to mess up the pronunciation of this guy's name. The flautist who is
Stathis
Karapanos,
yeah.
Who is phenomenal. But of course, you have these composers that they obviously have background. You know, Dorman, he has background. He's a Jewish American composer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you have some context when you listen to that music. But when you have like a Mozart, flute concerto, you don't have context. Like Mozart doesn't tell you like, well, I was thinking about this and it's about a girl and it's about this or it's about dogs or whatever. You have no context. So my question is, how do you create some kind of narrative? Do you create like a story about some kind of concerto that you're accompanying, or do you just let the music sort of control the atmosphere of the piece? Can you comment on that? Or
Sure. I mean, I think, it's interesting to me. That's what I like about doing both sides of it. Both, like in that album, we also do, the No Word from Tom from Stravinsky's
fantastic
Progress.
So clean.
Yeah, thank you. I
beautiful.
love that piece. And we have great musicians here. It's such a great talented field of instrumentalists here in town. It's incredible. It's just like there are singers. But I think it's a good question. I think that it was. I mean, I think there's kind of this absolute music without words, and like you're saying, and then there's there's words with text, and I think as I've matured and gotten older, and just it feels very, very natural, both going back and forth, and I don't even think of them as different actually.
Yeah,
much. I really don't think of them really different, and it's just.
What influences you, like, as opposed, like, in the regards of, like, tempo and dynamics, Because, I mean, of course you can follow what's on the page.
Yeah. But
so can a robot,
Yeah.
You always have to create the human experience. So is there something that influences you to, take, like, a Mozart concerto or Beethoven symphony and say, okay, Bernstein did it like this, von Karajan did it like this, Kleiber did it like this, and I'm going to do it like this?
I mean, there's a lot that influences you, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is kind of fascinating what all influences you. But I mean, I was even telling a young conductor recently, somebody 20 years younger than me, he's like really young, just saying, hey, listen to everything. Listen to a lot of recordings.
Good.
I mean, it's a great, especially the pandemic, you can't go to as many concerts. We're really informed by recordings. It's incredible what's available to us. It's incredible what's available to us on Spotify and all these streaming services now. I mean,
shout out to Spotify. You
can find everything there. It's incredible, and I think it's a great resource. And as musicians, I mean, that's what that is a lot of our education is just listening to this great music being played, historic recordings, older recordings, newer recordings. I would say the place that really informed me the most as a young musician was I had this great opportunity to be an apprentice at the Houston Symphony Orchestra in the last 3 years of the 90s when Eschenbach was the music director there.
Okay.
And it was just huge for me. I just, my mid-20s, I was able to just be there. Like all his rehearsals for 3 years, I was basically there. I mean, practically all. And I had this, I found a way to become, I was a student of the previous assistant conductor and a student of this man named Larry Ratcliffe at the Shepherd School of Music at Rice. But I also was able and I also had this fun way I found to get myself more comfortably ensconced inside the orchestra was I worked as a intern at the Houston Symphony Library for a couple years, just like 1 day a week, 5 or 6 hours a week. But that was so fantastic. Got me comfortable being around all these, what I thought at the time were scary people, these unionized musicians and this big famous top 10 orchestra in the United States, and kind of thought, it just got me comfortable to being around there. And I was influenced incredibly by just basically their 18-week subscription season.
Right.
And just being around Eschenbach for, I think, 10 or 12 of those weeks and guest conductors, and just being really, ensconced and fully part of that whole experience. Having the schedule where you see exactly there's, 3 days of rehearsals and there's 3 concerts that weekend, and just being a part of all that, and hearing Beethoven, Mahler, and Bernstein, and Schubert, and Schumann, and everything else. Milhaud, even I remember a very impressive Messiaen Tarangalila symphony and things like this. Having just all the experience, all the concertos that were done, and the new pieces that were done, and new works, and Elliott Carter piece comes to mind, and then also at the same time, Christoph Eschenbach is, my mentor and really fantastic conductor. At the time, was always conducting one big production at Houston Grand Opera in the David Gockley days, and that was a really impressive time for that company. The most impressive time, of course, in the new house, and Nixon in China was premiered there, and so many things. But so I got to go, and I actually worked at Houston Grand Opera prompting titles at the time too.
Oh,
it's a little side job I had too, which is great. It got me in the house. I wasn't a pianist. I had to kind of find my way into opera without being from the piano side. And I just think being, so Christoph Eschenbach was always conducting like a Strauss or a Wagner opera or Mozart opera every year. And so I was just around a lot of that, and I went to the rehearsals there too. And it became kind of, I would say, those years, and then continuing into my 10 years in New York City, 2000 through 2011, I was then working at the Metropolitan Opera doing titles for 5 years. That's where I met Corey Ellison. She used to write titles for them. And then I started working at New York City Opera because somebody there introduced me to Robin Thompson, et cetera, et cetera. And just being around symphony orchestras and opera companies all together all the time, that's somehow like, to me, this sounds really, really nice, because I'm like, wow, that's somehow what led me to fit in well here in Germany, because I always looked at them as like the same thing. Yeah. Like two sides of a coin, but not different things. Whereas often in the States, somebody's really focused on opera or symphony orchestra and not both. You know what I mean? Even here, I conducted quite a few ballets in the last years, which is also a great experience with really good orchestras and big houses. And like, people always, when you're a young conductor, people say, oh, don't ever conduct opera, or don't ever conduct a symphony orchestra, don't ever conduct a ballet, or don't focus on new music too much, or something like that, But I just say, do everything. Yeah, you grow and you learn from it all, and you need that experience as a conductor. You need years and you need time in front of an orchestra. It's hard to get, and so well, anyway, there's a long circuitous way back to your question, but I think. I really don't see. It's interesting. I think with absolute music, say for instance, a piece without a singer with the symphony orchestra, I don't really look for a way to make a story per se, but there always is a story, but it's in a musical way, kind of an absolute music way. Yeah, and you just kind of make this narrative out of that, and I love music with voice and with completely. Like it's just the same to me. It's like not any different. But there is something special about music without text, because I even sometimes find it even more direct, like straight to your heart, or your head. Sure. So anyway, there's my philosophy.
When opera singers are in school, we study a lot about connecting to the music that we're performing in a very personal way. you know, or at least showing that we are connecting. You know, with some people you can almost connect too much, and they, you know, will start like crying in the middle of their aria, and of course that doesn't work. You can't cry and sing.
Yeah, sure.
And other people, it like swings too far the opposite direction. They're just so technical that there's no connection to the words that they're actually saying. You know, there's no actual like personal connection. And I mean, that is something that has been so important to me. Not so much when I was doing like small roles coming up, but when I'm starting now to do these sort of bigger roles like Hoffmann, and I have to, you know, sort of maintain this over 3.5, 4 hours of an evening, is to really make what's happening to Hoffmann personal to me. And that's what gets me through, you know, what brings the character through the whole thing, as opposed to just like, okay, at this measure you're supposed to be in this spot, go to this spot, turn towards Olympia, say these words, turn back to the house, say these words, you know.
Sure.
That kind of thing, you know. You have to connect it all together. And then I would watch soloists, like, I mean, we're shooting right to the top.
Okay.
So like Yo-Yo Ma.
Sure.
When you watch Yo-Yo Ma perform a cello concerto with an orchestra, he's not thinking about like, okay, fourth position, third position, okay, this one, oh, I could play this like 3 different ways, you know. He's not thinking about that clearly.
Sure.
He has some kind of narrative in his mind. It doesn't, I don't think what the composer or what the original idea with the composer really matters. It's what Yo-Yo Ma wants to do with the piece.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's what separates him as this sort of superstar performer, is that what makes him special in playing, you know, these like the Bach sonatas. Are these sonatas? The cello sonatas? Yeah, it's a sonata, right? It's just solo, right?
Right.
What separates him from somebody else or a robot who could play it perfectly is him.
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
You know?
Of course.
And I think when you reach the pinnacle and you have all the technical skills, you know, what makes the music great is you.
Right. That's when you become a real interpreter.
Yeah.
That's when you become I think that's really what the greatest artists do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, I mentioned I'm still taking voice lessons, you know, so I'm still working on my voice technically.
We all are still learning forever, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to find, you know, Pavarotti sang it like this, Domingo sang it like this, and even the modern singers, you know, Calleja sang it like this, and Kaufmann sang it like this, you know, and what will make it special? No, don't let me just imitate something that, you know, even if it's something like iconic, like Nessun Dorma, La Donna Immobile, you know, the operas of Carmen, Rigoletto, you know, those are in my repertoire, you know. What will make my Don Jose special?
Yeah.
You know, that's like where I am right now, you know, but still stay technically attached. You know, that's hard too, because I mean, you know, especially Don Jose, like he basically loses his mind at the end of the opera. So like, how can I still stay technically attached so my voice just doesn't like spin off, you know, or I lose my voice after the first performance because I'm just screaming or something like that, but yet still convey to the audience the desperation that Don Jose has. You know, that's where I am right now in my career.
That makes sense to me. I think that's really interesting. It reminds me of one thing I can make a parallel about as a conductor. So when you're conducting the first rehearsals of a piece, almost any piece, unless it's a piece the orchestra really happens to know already very, very well. Mm-hmm. So for instance, last week with the new orchestra, Berlin Academy of American Music, we were performing. We performed in the Elbphilharmonie on Saturday night, but we had this great piece by Darius Milhaud, La Création du Monde. It's a masterpiece of his. And it's a piece that I would say a lot of musicians haven't played. It doesn't get played that much, but once everybody plays it, they're like, wow, that's
Yeah.
a fantastic piece. It's like 17 minutes long.
Was this concert at the Elbphilharmonie?
Yeah, it's there on Saturday
Hamburg?
night. Yeah.
Wow.
In the Grosse Saal. Yeah.
That's awesome,
Kind of
man.
amazing.
Congrats.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Congrats.
It was incredible. And yeah, just a few days ago, I think I just got past it. I feel like I'm fully recovered now.
The adrenaline
It was. I mean, I conducted there a few
dissipated.
times before, but it was with my own orchestra, with a new orchestra,
Yeah.
which is a big undertaking for our little team, but it went extremely well. So, but anyway, and what's interesting is that when you can, like, I think it's interesting the way you're talking about how you're trying to sing something to its fullest, ability, that you can bring it to its live form where it's really something special, something different and special, and where it captivate your audience, and so when you're working towards that goal, of course, so it's the first rehearsal or two. We were in a rehearsal room here in Berlin that doesn't have the best acoustics. It's a little too
live. Okay.
Very much too live.
Okay.
So it's difficult to rehearse in. And also, the musicians, they prepared, but they don't know it that well. And so maybe I think only one or two of them had ever played the piece before.
Okay.
And so if 30 musicians in the orchestra for this event, and we go, well, but you have to really show, okay, this is all in 2, and there's several transitions where you kind of have to go into 4 here for a little while, and this unfolds a little bit like this. We take some time here, and then we go to this next phrase, this next section, which is much faster, and people just have to learn it, how it works, how it really goes, how does he conduct it, how are we trying to shape it, how are we phrasing it, and everything, and so what's interesting to me, I think, as a conductor, is that the first rehearsals, you're conducting it kind of almost technically in a way. And then once you get it up and going where people really know the piece, you start having much, much more freedom.
Yeah.
And you don't conduct it similarly then. You can conduct it much more freely because then everybody knows it and they know what to do next.
Right.
And you don't have to overly conduct everything technically
Right,
as much
right.
as you're trying to show the space and shape and form and the high points and the way you want to bring some dark section out and make something, and how you want to phrase things. And then, so it's just amazing to me because in the first rehearsal, we really kind of have to be really technical and get through some things and show how it's all organized.
Sure.
Second rehearsal, a bit more of that too. Third rehearsal, which is the Anspielprobe, like dress rehearsal on stage at the Elfie, kind of finishing that up and really moving fully into this performance mode. And then the performance mode was just completely, even much more so that evening. It's just amazing how it just completely, it changes. And when you conduct an opera, it's the same way, I find, in the beginning, if you saw me conducting, it looks more simple perhaps than it would after a performance or two. So, and it's and more dynamic and more musical. I mean, that's the thing that you love as a musician. You're like, oh gosh, now I can make music.
Yeah.
First few rehearsals, sometimes you're kind of like, we have to really work here just to get to the music.
Yeah.
And then the music
Exactly.
uncovers itself.
Exactly.
And it shows itself, and that I think it's interesting, and you need experience as a conductor to figure out how that works and feel confident about it, because it's very important that the musicians recognize, okay, he's leading us the right way, he's confident, he's comfortable, there's not going to be any issue. And sometimes I think I remember when I was younger, maybe even just 6, 7, 8 years ago when I first got to Europe, sometimes I was also in rehearsal. It's really important, I think, from your point too, you have to really give everything.
To a certain extent. I mean, at least you have to show your emotional connection, even if you're not giving 100% with the voice, because you always have to save the voice. It's the most delicate part, and it's the most important part in opera, is to get the voice out. So, yeah. I
mean, I think that's the same for us, too. We have to really, you have to give
like
everything.
An edge, right?
Yes, there's a different
edge, and you can flatten that edge if you hit it too much.
Yes.
Yeah,
you have to save something, of course.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to bring a lot to the rehearsal. You can't I'm just going to give it half. You have to still you think of it as everything at the moment, but it's like 80% maybe, or 75% or something, what you're going to give in the performance in the evening or something.
Right.
But it's interesting how that all unfolds. And anyway,
I heard an interview with this is sort of interesting. I heard an interview with Domingo one time, Placido Domingo. Shout out to Placido if you're listening.
I met him a couple times.
Yeah, I met him once too. He's a good, fantastic guy. I read an interview by him one time, and he was talking about singing like verismo, the genre of verismo opera, and he was talking about, in Verismo, there's often these spots where you don't sing the actual notes. You sing sort of, it's connected more to the emotion than the actual notes. Like think of the end of Vesti la Giuba from Pagliacci, Ridi del il cor.
Yes.
Like no tenor sings il cor.
Right.
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
And somebody asked him about that, and Domingo said, I never practiced those. I always sing the notes when I'm rehearsing myself. And in the rehearsals leading up to the performance, I always sing the notes. And that way, in the performance, it's completely organic. What comes out in those moments, is completely organic. And I thought that was really on point. I thought that was... I'm trying to do that myself now, you know?
That's cool, yeah.
Because it sort of keeps you in your lane, and then when you're really ready to let it hang out on the edge, it's organic. It doesn't sound like you practiced.
Yeah, right. You don't want to... Yeah, sure.
It comes out completely organic,
I think that's somehow true the way you are, the way one is as a conductor. I don't know, at least the way I feel like physically as a conductor, that comes out much more, it comes out more in the performance. You really see what I'm like as a conductor, I think, more in the performance than you do in the rehearsal, even though, sure it's a lot similar, but in the performance usually is when I feel most free and relaxed, actually, and that's when you can really, be at your best.
Yeah. Just a little remedial thing about conductors. So people who are listening who are not musicians, I think... To non-musical people, conductors get a bad rap because they don't know what they're doing up there.
Oh, of course they don't.
People don't know what a conductor does. He's like, oh, are they giving them the notes?
Yeah,
like,
right.
No, they're not giving them the notes. They're like, well, sometimes, they're just looks like they're waving their hands around and not really doing anything.
Yes.
But one thing that I've learned is that you can really tell a professional conductor from somebody who just sort of wants to be a conductor. And the big differentiation is a real conductor leads the orchestra, and somebody who just kind of is like, oh, I was a pianist for years and now I want to try to be a conductor without really knowing what he's doing.
Yeah.
Will let the orchestra conduct him.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
we all have to learn how to break out of that.
Right. But what becomes interesting to me then is that, we have this concept as singers is that we can't listen to the orchestra. We always have to follow the stick because the speed of light travels faster than the speed of sound. So if you're only listening to the orchestra, and especially when you get into one of the big houses in Germany, if you're singing with the orchestra, you're behind.
Oh, yeah.
In the audience, it appears that you're singing behind the orchestra.
But don't you get to the point where you feel, because you're trained and you're experienced with it, when you're watching the conductor, that you are singing with the orchestra, even though you're really watching the stick and sticking with the conductor? Do you feel like you're singing with the orchestra? You can feel that sense of, wow, this great orchestra's accompanying me? I wonder. Now I'm asking you a question. No?
When it's right, I always feel like I'm ahead.
Okay.
And that's sort of unnerving. Because of course, in the rehearsals, they're always using a piano, which is extremely percussive.
Sure.
So you always feel that you feel that percussion underneath you. And when you're listening to the orchestra, it's the violins, and it's suddenly legato, and it's not so percussive.
Yes.
So if I'm singing with that legato, I
even
know
at the
that
front lip of the stage, even at the very front of the stage,
you
always feel like that. Exactly. Yeah.
But usually, what I do if I have enough rehearsal, the conductor and I we agree on tempos, and then what happens is I don't have to look at him. I know that if I have the feeling that I'm slightly ahead of the orchestra, if I'm leading the orchestra, we're together.
Yes. Yeah.
But the first couple of rehearsals, when you leave the rehearsal hall and get onto the stage, I mean, even where I am now, I've been singing professionally for over 22 years. It's like you still have this feeling of like, it's wrong. I'm ahead. Something's wrong. It's like, it's almost like panic mode because the piano really supports you. You really feel that support, and you suddenly just lose that. when you're on the stage with the orchestra.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I know that. I know that very well, of course. And
so back to the how it ties in with a conductor then. So when you're conducting this is only what I imagine, because I've never conducted a big orchestra or anything like that. What I imagine is that, especially with when you reach a certain level, when you're creating the musicality, you almost hear it in your head before the musicians play it.
Yeah, and I think actually lots of things that we do, we're actually conducting ahead of when they play it.
Yeah, you're conducting ahead. Otherwise,
otherwise they don't know where to play.
Exactly.
And that's actually one thing that's very confusing. Sometimes I go back to the States. I remember a few years ago I conducted the Atlanta Symphony in the summer, and I was like, you guys are all on top of the beat. Oh my God, I can barely put the downbeat down, and you already played it.
Oh wow,
yeah,
that's amazing.
And it's very different compared to Europe or Germany, especially where orchestras do play a little behind the beat, which I actually quite like.
Okay, because
you can show more.
Yeah,
and they can follow more because they see what you're going to do.
Right.
Of course, in very fast music, you're usually right with the beat. They're usually right with the beat. That's normal everywhere. But in slower music or moderato or kind of like allegrettos or something, usually you're ahead. You conduct ahead, they play behind, and that's good because then you can show the style and the shape. And once you get it up and working, it's fluid. And yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah,
I mean, we live in this information age where you can go on YouTube and you can find some like old footage of the great conductors. I'm always fascinated when I come across like a Schulte, and he's in rehearsals conducting Wagner, something from Wagner, like Götterdämmerung or something, and I don't know. I mean, it's almost apoplectic. I mean, he's just like all over the place, but the orchestra is perfect. They are just perfectly together. So he has these great maestros. They have this ability to impose their will.
Oh yeah.
But that's after conducting for 40
all these years.
Or
yeah, right.
30
right.
years. It's like that.
That's right.
Kleiber was another one. You can find footage of him working with orchestras. He would conduct like the Freischütz Overture a lot. And he was just amazing with getting his will across to the orchestra, and that just so fascinated me because it surpasses, it goes beyond the technical aspects of being a conductor, and it goes beyond the aspects of just feeling when something is musical. It's more about like he has the most minute detail already figured out in his head. Or at least it seems that way.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I think this is what's interesting for singers and for soloists also. I think the greatest singers and soloists also have this ability. They know exactly how they want to do it, or even if they're willing to be playful with it and change some things, adjust some things in real time, but they have a strong will and they have a strong like footprint of like how this music should go that they put down and they lay it down, and that's why it's always nice when you play with when you accompany somebody that really knows what they're going to do, And I think it's the same thing. I think it's almost the same thing. Like really knows exactly how they sing this thing, and they know if the conductor's not kind of come along with them, they know to say, hey, I need you to do a little more of this, and just be cool about it. Hey, I need you to go faster or slower or whatever. I think it's quite similar.
I think I was watching a documentary about Carlos Kleiber the other, this was maybe a year ago, and I thought it was really interesting where, is it the opening, the first movement of the Beethoven Fifth? That's the bum 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 dum bum bum bum, or is that the ninth?
That's ninth.
That's the ninth.
Yeah.
And then it goes into like a fugue. That Kleiber got his inspiration for, you have that orchestra hit. Wham-pa-dum, wham-pa-dum, bum 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 ba-dum. He got his inspiration to keep the orchestra together by watching Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway.
Okay.
When they would conduct their orchestras. Because you could still get footage of that at that time,
Okay.
and it was just like, I don't know if you remember Cab Calloway, like he had this big baton that was like almost a meter long.
Okay.
It was thick and white, and he would conduct his jazz orchestra, up in Harlem, at the Cotton Club or something like that, And I mean, he would just he'd be dancing and swinging it all around. And his orchestra was just so tight.
Uh-huh.
But he figured out, he got his inspiration from watching Cab Calloway conduct his orchestra,
Wow.
And especially, he mentioned that moment especially.
Huh.
And it was just like because I guess he was sort of obsessing, is like, how can I get this orchestra hit together, as opposed to just, but can I put something else behind it?
Right.
How can I connect that to something more organic, as opposed to just a technical style by going,
Yeah, sure.
And it was this Cab Calloway thing.
Oh, that's cool.
I think that's cool. Stuff like that really.
Yeah,
it lifts the music off the page for me. It makes it into this human experience. Which
Well, that's kind of one thing that I love so much about conducting is that it's physical. This gestural idea, like you get to conduct and be physical and show the music in your hands and your arms, your body. I'm a conductor that definitely uses my body a lot.
Yeah,
and I just love that. I mean, I remember when I was in college, in music school, some musicians tell me, "Oh, I can't stand this conductor. He just dances all over the place." But I think I think it's there's a mix that's needed. I think for me, it's definitely helpful to use my body when I conduct. But for other conductors, that maybe don't need to as much because they have some other amazing way to show the music. But I think it's I love breathing through music, and I love showing music with my hands and have these colors and ideas, and it's amazing to me because it's a whole different palette, another way to describe music, another way to show music. Like I think it's amazing that it's an art form in itself in a way.
Right.
You have this art form to show music, to lead music, to conduct music, to show with gesture what a phrase sounds like to you.
Yeah.
That's like my job, and I love that. I love that. It's
Or as one of your reviews said, Garrett Keast creates an atmosphere. I think they used the word atmosphere, and I can't remember what came after that, but an atmosphere that was ideal for this kind of music or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that is the essence of being a conductor. Nobody wants to sit in their chair and watch a violinist or watch an orchestra play so technically that all you see is, wow, they're really pulling that bow hard, or wow, he really nailed that combination of, he nailed that arpeggio or whatever, something like that. Nobody wants. That's not the point of music.
Yeah, what you want. What I always feel is especially when there's something atmospheric or something lush or something slow or even fast. I mean, it's about creating an atmosphere in the room. Like you want to create a feel. Like the other day, one thing was really nice in this program we performed on Saturday night in Hamburg, was there's this new piece. Well, it's not that new. It's 7 years old. It was written in 2014, but American composer named Caroline Shaw.
Okay.
And we
shout out to Caroline.
Yeah, she's a really fantastic composer. Writes a lot of choral music, lots for the voice, and she has a piece called Entr'acte. It's for string orchestra, and we only had 14 people in the orchestra for this piece, and it's a really modern, fresh, and attractive piece. It's like, and it has some darker moments for sure, and very modern moments, but also it's very approachable still, and it has some moments that are completely silent and quiet, and you could hear a pin drop in the quiet sections in this big hall, this beautiful big hall in the Elbphilharmonie, and at the end there's this violin duet that winds down into just solo cello playing a beautiful solo, pizzicato solo for the last minute and a half to 2 minutes of the piece by herself in this beautiful, huge, beautiful concert hall. And it's just, that's what's amazing. Like that piece is so atmospheric, even from the beginning with everyone playing. It's a beautiful atmospheric piece. And it's like you get to create this sea of sound in this room, this beautiful music in this quiet space. And it's interesting. Even audiences so react to that. Audiences, we all notice sometimes an audience, like even in that concert of ours in the Rhapsody in Blue in the second half, there was somebody's alarm or somebody's phone rang. It was some really strange ringtone,
Okay.
and that's just like, you can't help it. It's going to happen. It happens even here in Germany. But in that piece, it didn't happen. And you could hear a pin drop. It was, it's Corona time, so there's only 1,300 people. It was ausverkauft. It was sold out.
Yeah.
But they only allowed 1,300 out of the 2,000 seats. But it was not a single breath you could hear in the room for the last 2 and 3 minutes, and it's just amazing when you could, like, that's what I feel like is so special about being in an orchestra or being a musician at all, is when you get to create this space in a room. That's what's so special about, and that's somehow what's special about acoustics, like a concert hall. A concert hall is a special place.
Definitely.
It's because you're in this room that's made for sound, and it's reserved for that. And it's reserved for those moments, And I just find that so special that's like our canvas,
Yeah.
And so I think, I just think to myself, that's what I really love this. And one thing I can tell a story that I think is nice is, so Christoph Eschenbach, I had this great opportunity to meet him in Houston, Texas. I'm like so thankful that Christoph Eschenbach was the music director of the Houston Symphony for 11 years back then, because I met him there, and in the end, he brought me to the Paris Opera to assist him on a big production, and he brought me to NDR to do a big Mahler 8 with him and to assist him on some things. And those were what kind of got me into Europe. And I'm so needed that and so appreciative of that. But more importantly, I learned so much from just watching him. And he's not a tall man. And he's a very thin man. And it's funny. Sometimes I've often thought in my life in New York City days, when you see a lot of different international conductors come through town, conducting at the Philharmonic and all over, wherever, I often noticed, like, sometimes I thought really thin conductors couldn't conduct the big, amazing, romantic, massive pieces.
Interesting.
I thought that often.
Yeah.
It's very much a generalization.
Right.
Anyway, but it is sometimes true. Like, they're really good at Stravinsky and Mozart and quick and nimble things. It's very much it still is very much a generalization.
Stereotype, but
stereotype. But I think it does have some truth to it.
Okay.
Anyway, but Christoph Eschenbach, not so. He's also good at that, but Christoph is amazing because he's 81 or 2 now, and he won a major prize as a piano soloist at 18 years old or something, and has been a star actually since then. A Deutsche Grammophon artist at 20 years old, and as a pianist and everything. But he's been conducting now for 50 years or something, or 45 years or something like that, and all over the world, of course. Huge career, and you see him conduct the slow movement of Mahler 6 or Mahler 8 or something like this, or a slow movement of Dvorak Symphony. I really care about. I think it's a special quality. So for somebody that can lead a slow Mahler 4, the slow movement, it's just spectacular. And somebody that can lead that brilliantly, where it just unfolds naturally and it doesn't feel technical how it opens. He has a very special ability like that, and it's a marvel to behold. It really is special. There's only, not all conductors can do that.
If you can make Strauss and Mahler look easy,
you
got something special, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. As a singer, too, singing Strauss, for the tenors, I think Strauss just hated the tenors. It's like,
yeah, he did.
My gosh.
Ariadne, wow.
Ariadne, even the Italian singer in Rosenkavalier, it's a 2-page aria.
Oh, it's a great aria.
And it's just, there's freaking like 4 B flats and a high B. And you're just like screaming. It's crazy. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. I want to talk about your orchestra. But first, do we want to have like a real drink now? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. I could think that, actually.
What do you think?
It's Friday.
TGIF. Yeah, we got some red wine.
I'll take a little water too, and then.
Yep.
But
here's a glass.
Thank you.
With extra caulk.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, no, it's clean.
Oh, it looks fine.
And that's still water, and the other one is bubbly.
Okay.
And there's beer in here.
There's a beer in there?
There's beer in there. There's dark and light beer. And we got some grappa, we got some schnapps, we got some vodka, we got some scotch.
There's a cooler here.
There's a cooler. Oh, it's the other way.
Oh. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Helles.
That's the Augustiner.
Yeah? Okay.
That's the opener.
Sure.
Yeah.
For you?
I'll have an Augustiner as well.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, cool.
Perfect. Is that working? Is that not one? That one not so good. I'll try that.
Oh, that looks better. Although I maybe have it almost.
Hey.
Nope.
I don't know. This thing might be broken. I don't know. I think I got it at the Euro shop.
Nice.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers. Great.
Or
cool.
Prost.
Prost, yeah. That's a good beer.
Oh, yeah. Little day drinking.
After a long week. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You've got... Now, your orchestra started... When did it sort of start?
1 year ago. Like, it's really formed during the pandemic.
So this is like a COVID production.
Yes. I mean,
Wow.
it's crazy. I mean,
But good for you for, being proactive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's been that kind of time.
How did it start?
Well, several things lined up, but I mean, really, what happened is that it wouldn't be. The Berlin Academy of American Music (BAM) wouldn't exist without Corona. I must say. So there are some. It's interesting now that Corona is now into the third year. I think nobody ever talks of silver linings anymore. But there were some, like the first year, people were like, well, this is opening up this in my life, or I have more time with my family, or this or that. And I noticed that nobody talks about that anymore. Everyone's like, we are finished with this, please. Can we be done with this already?
Yeah.
And I think we are going to get there now. I think this is the end. I think the next few months, winter's the worst part of Corona, we all know.
Right.
And it's going to get better now soon. You can almost feel spring is coming in another month or 6 weeks or something. And I do think we're going to get out of it. And, but it was, I'll kind of just give my little story. When Corona began, I was in Stockholm at the opera there, and just started rehearsing there. And then they sent me home. It was March 11th, and I remember I conducted one day of orchestra rehearsal on March 10th or something.
What production was it?
Oh, it was a ballet. It was Don Quixote.
Oh, okay. Great.
And so I was conducting this rehearsal, and I remember shaking the concertmaster's hand, and we had a really nice rehearsal that day. And the next day, and then that evening, I was, back in my apartment or something in Stockholm, and that evening I was just watching the news. Everybody was watching the news. You were watching the news too.
Yeah.
And then I realized that evening, I think tomorrow I can't shake anyone's hand when I go back to the opera, So I went back to the next day, and I did not shake anyone's hand, and I conducted another big rehearsal of this piece, and then at the end, basically said to them, I kind of knew I was going to be sent home any day now. I said, well, listen, I hope to see you all again. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Let's see what happens, kind of fingers crossed. And they all kind of laughed and agreed, and I think the next day my agent called and they canceled finally. They were like the last people to go down. And so I went home, and I got back to Berlin, and what was nice about that time, I remember, is that everybody was screwed,
Yeah. Everyone was in the same boat.
Everybody in the same boat. Like the most famous artists also were sent home. Everybody, didn't matter at your career level at all. Everybody was shut down.
Right.
It was really interesting. And I went back to Berlin, and Megan and I and the boys, I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and we were
great ages.
Yeah, it was nice. Great. It was beautiful weather in Berlin. It was spectacular. Every day for like 3 months, there was like not a cloud in the sky. Perfect weather in the spring. It was amazing. And we got to go a little bit to some parks, until they shut it down further. So we went outside every day, but mostly stayed at home. And we're kind of shocked, and like everybody's watching the news and trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
And then a couple months passed, and maybe in later April or so, I started saying, I have to go down to my studio. I have a little office studio down the street from my apartment that I keep just because can't get enough work done in the house with studying and with just all the administrative things you have to do as a conductor.
Right.
And so I go down there all the time. And so I said, Megan, I have to go down there at least like 3 hours a day during the weekdays. Started doing that and talking to people, thinking about things. And one thing I really recognize is that I often have been asked to conduct American works because I live in Europe and I'm an American. And so one of my agents, I have 3 agents, would usually once a year, twice a year call me, hey, Garrett, the orchestra in Mannheim wants to do a Bernstein project and this and that. Or the John Neumeier, the Hamburg Ballet, is doing this big Bernstein dances production that he did with Leonard Bernstein back in the day, and they want to do this again, and we think you'd be perfect for it. Something like that. Something like that would happen because I know that music, I know that repertoire, and it somehow speaks authentically with me. So but I never thought to focus on it because I'm an American. I'm an American in Europe, and I grew up studying under a German conductor, and of course I know a lot of repertoire. I'm interested in a lot of repertoire,
sure,
of course. But at the same time, I started realizing, in Germany and in Europe, in Germany they hire German conductors to conduct the German pieces, and lots, and they conduct, and they hire one of my agents is in France, and he's like, oh yeah, my 2 French conductors, they go all around the world, and they always get asked to conduct La Mer and Debussy like endlessly.
Yeah,
they're desperate to conduct something else, but I never thought to focus on American music, but there's a lot of great American music. And there's a lot that gets performed in Europe. And I started talking to people about it and a few trusted people and friends in the business. And I was thinking that maybe I should just really kind of focus on American repertoire because it's something I'm good at, it's something I love, and it's something that it's done here regularly with the big orchestras and opera houses. And so anyway, this kind of went like that. And that summer, the first summer of 20, myself and another musician here in town, we put together 2 different readings that summer. We read some John Adams. We read some with a small orchestra, like 15 players.
Okay. And where were the players?
From all around Berlin.
Okay. Just Berlin?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's great musicians
sure.
everywhere.
Sure. And were the musicians all American or
No.
From all over? Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, BAM is not about having American musicians. It's about American-related music and themes. But it's not necessarily American musicians. I mean, I'm an American conductor, but for instance, the orchestra last week, we had 31 players in the orchestra, and I don't know how many were American. Only 3 or 4 were actually American, and I think 3 or 4 others probably studied in the States at some point.
Okay.
But fully international, like an international orchestra is here.
Sure. And Berlin is so international. I mean,
right.
If you ask for, that you're looking for players, you'll get them from every single nation on Earth.
Yeah,
so,
it's amazing. Yeah. And so that summer, we did these 2 readings in Kreuzberg in a studio I knew I could get. We were getting careful. The numbers were down. We had the windows open. Some played with masks and things like that. And we had these 2 readings of Copland, Appalachian Springs, Stravinsky, Dumbarton Oaks, and also some chamber symphony of John Adams. And everybody just had a blast, and everybody's like, cool. I haven't played since February with an orchestra. So nice to play with cool people again, and really good musicians and professional musicians, and excellent young professional musicians, and lots of them play in the Staatskapelle and DSO or Mahler Chamber Orchestra and things like that. And we just started, and I just told some friends about it. Some of my friends knew I was doing that. We did that just for fun. We did that. And then Craig Urquhart, who works for the Leonard Bernstein office, is a very fine composer himself, and Stathis Karapanos, this Greek flutist, who I'm friends with both of them, called me and said, Garrett, what do you think about, or Craig called first, what do you think about recording my Lamentation for Flute and Strings with Stathis? Stathis said, I've been talking about it. It would be really fun to do, and we thought, since you have that orchestra, you did some things, you could put together an orchestra. It just needs 12 people or something. Yeah, sure, we could do that. No problem. Okay. And you just need a little money, but we could figure it out. And he said, yeah, we can get the money, or we can figure something out. And then it was funny. So we talked only 2 or 3 minutes because I was actually in Helsinki doing something, and it was like one of the only houses that was open in that fall in 20, and I was there working. And was with some friends at a pizzeria, actually. It was still open. And so, okay, well, let's talk about it tomorrow. No problem. Well, yeah, I'd love to do it. Let's do it, fine. And then 5 minutes later, Stathis called me, Garrett, I heard you just talked to Craig and you're interested in doing this. Let's do it, man. That'd be great. And I was like, yeah, sure. It sounds cool. They wanted to record it and just like put it on Spotify and the streaming services, just as one piece.
Right.
You can do that. And
So
without a full
basically
album.
they basically like, and the orchestra was like volunteering their services or getting a small fee?
No,
or?
we would have to pay them.
Yeah,
But it would be
okay.
like the kind of thing we'd need one rehearsal and we'd do recording.
Okay.
And really good musicians, so they can do that. And
Okay.
and it's only a 12-minute piece or something. So we were going to do that, and so Stathis, at the end of the call said, "Well, let's talk about it tomorrow when you have more time." So we did that. We started talking, and he's like, "Well, maybe we should record 2 other things too. I was thinking about recording this or recording that." I was like, "Yeah." And Nancy's like, I think we can find sponsorship. I have some ideas for where we can find some sponsorships. And I was like, yeah, this sounds good. And so we kept just talking, and our plan just grew and grew and grew. And I told him that I was already kind of trying to think about, I'm getting comfortable here.
Please do.
I told him that, I'm kind of focusing on American repertoire, and I'd love it if we could create this thematically for this recording to have kind of an American thread through it. And he's like, yeah, it sounds cool to me. I like that idea. And so you were going to do the Dorman, and Dorman's a great Israeli-American composer, and he's a friend of mine and a very fine composer, well-known, actually. Played a lot of pieces are played both sides of the Atlantic, and he wanted to play Craig's piece, of course, which is like premiere. And then we just started looking for other things. And then he found this Takemitsu. And at first I was like, well, how's that going to fit? I mean, he's a Japanese composer, but it was amazing. It's an amazing piece. It is his American piece, this great piece, Toward the Sea 2. Mm-hmm. We found this piece. It fits. It's the Melville novel Moby Dick.
Right.
It's that story. And it takes place off the coast of Connecticut and Northeast and everything.
Yep.
Massachusetts. And a great piece, and so we wanted it to be an interesting album. We didn't want to just put standard things on it. Mm-hmm. I mean, but Onyx. Then we thought to ask Hen Rice about it, because I said, Hen, she's done a lot of recording. She knows what she's doing. She has some experience with that. She's a friend of mine. Worked together in Vienna a few times. So I called her up.
Cool.
And she's a great collaborator. She's really cool. She wants to do things. I think she had an album with us come out in end of October, and she had just had another one like 2 weeks ago come out.
Yeah.
And
I looked her up on Spotify and heard some other stuff that she does, and she's really working hard.
She's
really busy.
a great artist. Yeah, busy
Yeah.
artist. She's really at the top of her career right now. And so we talked to her about it. She's like, well, I think if you bring me on to do a couple things, the Dorman and this, I always wanted to do the Anne True Scene with you from No Word from Tom from the Rake's Progress, because she and I have been talking about doing that.
Yeah.
And some other things too. Like we want to do very much the Barber Knoxville Summer of 1915.
Wow, that would be fun.
Yeah, we want to do that in performance, and of course to record it eventually too, maybe. And so she just jumped on the album. I mean, none of us got paid. We put all our forces together. Luckily there was one major sponsor found and a few others, and I put some money into it too, and Stathis as well, and we found her, and she brought basically the Onyx, the record company. They were really supportive. They liked very much that we had the Copeland Appalachian Spring 13 instrument version on there, because it's a big title.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. That's pretty awesome that this is the original version. Right. So Copeland wrote it for 13 players as opposed to how it's normally performed these days with like a full orchestra of, I don't know, 35, 40.
No, like
50, 70 players. Yeah, which is very interesting. That's very interesting. I'm glad you put that on there. Yeah, that works really well. And the Dumbarton Oaks, which is a well-known piece too. It's a good title to like make the CD work or the recording work streaming, so people like go there, Right. And so we just put this rather eclectic mix together, but it all has a thread. And I asked Stathis, like, I'd rather name the orchestra something rather than just like call it the Berlin Kammer Orchestra or something. I don't know, whatever. And so I said, let's call it the Berlin Academy of American Music.
I just thought of it. I thought it was
it's
a
great.
nice name, and rather than calling it the Berlin Chamber Orchestra, which Berlin Academy, it's like more like the.
There's like 15 orchestras in Berlin, now 16, thanks to you.
Yes.
But they all have names very similar to that. But I think your name stands out.
That's the point. So it's not an academy, but it is an orchestra focused on this repertoire, and so that worked, and he was all for it. He was supportive of that name. I was really glad to see, and it becomes. I told him, well, this orchestra might become something. We'll see. And he said, well, we can just call it that, and whatever, it's fine. And so he liked it, and we put this recording together, and it was near here, actually. Teldeck Studios is not far. I think you can walk there in half an hour.
Cool.
And it's a spectacular recording studio. I think it's the best recording studio in Berlin, or actually in Germany. If you go to the BAM website, you'll see a photo of us there.
Okay.
It's a beautiful space, amazing acoustic, great for a voice.
Check it out.
I mean, the acoustic makes the recording work so well,
yeah,
especially for the Stravinsky and the Copland. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and that's how it came about. We made this recording, and then through the summer, we were like, we have to get a website up. We have to find a way to put our first concerts together. So I have a couple major people that are helping me run the orchestra, and we found a way to do 2 concerts in November. Our first 2 concerts was just a smaller orchestra of only 17, and because the CD came out end of October, good friends of mine, I've conducted a lot in Hamburg over the years, and so some good friends of mine in the business in Hamburg passed on my CD to a presenter there that needed an orchestra for this February 5th date. And then it's not luck, but it is lucky in a way that then we were just in early December, we were given this February 5th, Saturday night, Grosse Saal date in the Elbphilharmonie for the orchestra. And they told us they wanted an orchestra with percussion and bläser and such. So we brought the brass, and we increased the size of the orchestra and put together a really nice program. And so now the orchestra is really kind of off and running. We have a CD out, and we have our third concert was in the Elbphilharmonie, the best concert hall in the country at the moment,
the newest and most popular for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. And do you know, did they record? Are you going to maybe release the live concert from the?
No, it's not. It wasn't recorded.
Okay,
it wasn't recorded, but
I'd love to hear that ringtone in the middle of.
Yeah, right. It was. I think it was actually during her encore, the pianist's encore. Thankfully, well, not thankfully, but anyway.
No, I'm busting your balls. Sorry.
Yes, of course. No worries. Yeah. So anyway, now we do have an agent for the orchestra, and basically, it's really it's what I just finished my spiel with it a little bit is that what's great about the orchestra, we're not just about presenting Charles Ives, Aaron Copland, Leonard Bernstein. It's Igor Stravinsky is one of my favorites.
Sure.
Became American citizen, lived in America longer than anywhere else he had ever lived. Lived longer than, he didn't live in Russia very long.
Right.
And lived in France several years, a little bit in Switzerland, but he lived in the United States from I think 38 till his death in 71. And he wrote a lot of great pieces there. Rake's Progress is an American opera. He wrote that there. He wrote that in L.A.
Yeah, amazing.
There's a lot of great pieces that were written in the States by Igor Stravinsky, and so he of course isn't an American composer, but I did write a Medium article last year I called "I Forgot Stravinsky Was American." Just cool. As a cute title, but I went into that. And I think that's the idea. Darius Milhaud lived in Los Angeles a long time. Lots of great European composers that immigrated to the United States, and vice versa, and connections. I think, for instance, Avner Dorman, the Israeli composer, he moved to the States when he was, I think, 20 or something, and been there for 25 years or 20 years or something, and is really an Israeli-American composer. But he brings a really interesting perspective,
Sure.
And so I think it's interesting to highlight those things, and of course women composers as well. And Anthony Davis is a great composer now that's finally getting his due. He wrote this amazing opera, Central Park 5. They did it in Long Beach Opera.
Okay.
In 19, and it won the Pulitzer Prize in 20.
Wow.
For Pulitzer Prize in music. This Anthony Davis's Central Park 5.
That's amazing.
Very difficult story, very timely because of politics, because of Donald Trump story. Amazing piece. And so anyway,
It's about these kids who are falsely accused of a rape, a murder?
Rape and murder. And locked up for 8 years.
Yeah.
From the age of like 15 years old.
Yeah. Even though there was not a lot of evidence against them, they were still... And Trump was supporting the narrative that they were guilty.
Trump even put out a full-page ad in the New York Times. This is 1989 when this all happened. Full-page ad in the New York Times, you can look it up and find it really quickly. It says, we should reinstate the death penalty in New York State for these 5 kids.
I remember that.
But they were innocent.
Yeah.
Completely.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's... So anyway, there's... lots of interesting themes. And so I think in Europe, and what's great about Europe compared to the States is that there's so many festivals and presenters that bring orchestras around. So we're really wanting to find a way forward to be on the festival circuit, Yeah. The chamber orchestra of 25 players, 35 players, could be any size, really. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and lots of interesting repertoire to do.
Definitely.
Yeah, so anyway, that's our story.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many small festivals in Germany. A lot of these castles will do. Sometimes they'll do opera. I think sometimes they're kind of small time. Like you have to, like my agents won't even contact them. So I just write to them. It's like, look, I can do a recital there. We can do an opera. I can help organize it, or I can perform in it, but they're everywhere. They're just all over Germany.
Sure.
I think it was this past Christmas, I decided I was going to do like a Christmas card, like an email Christmas card kind of thing.
Yeah.
And especially in this time, I think a lot of companies and a lot of casting directors are wondering which singers are sort of still alive. I don't mean that literally, I mean that figuratively, are they still singing, or are they did they move back to the States? Are they insurance salesmen and things like that? So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna write.
Well, that's why it's good you have a podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm alive.
Yes.
So I made this Christmas card, and I thought, okay, well, how can I reach the biggest audience? Because I could just post it on my Instagram or my Facebook, and then it's sort of a word of mouth. But I can send it. What's nice is that you can get access to the intendant office, or the KBB, which is the office that controls all of the artists that work in an opera house or a symphony, something like that, just by going to Opera Base. Familiar with Opera Base?
Yeah.
So you go to Opera Base, you put in theaters, and you put in, and then I thought, okay, well, there's 80 opera houses in Germany, so I'll be writing I can do a bulk email for 80 theaters. But what they do at Opera Base is they include the symphonies that do opera sometimes, and also the summer festivals. You want to guess how many there are just in Germany?
I don't know.
You want to guess?
150.
300
festivals. Yeah, but a lot.
Everything together.
Oh, all together.
So the Staatstheatern,
yes,
the summer festivals, and the symphonies that do that do opera as well.
Sure.
300.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's so many festivals that bring in. I mean, the festival to bring in an orchestra, even our size, still it costs a good bit. Mm-hmm. And the way that we've learned also, they're going to bring us in with a major soloist. That's also part of the deal a lot of times. So, we have to find a way to break into that field, and we're working on that now. So,
yeah.
But it's amazing because there's just so many festivals in the States. There are quite a few nice festivals, but not like here. I mean, there's just so many more. Yeah. So much more support.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons why people often ask me, well, why did you come to Germany to continue your opera career? I was like, well, do the math. Germany's the size of Montana. I mean, just with theaters, there's 80 theaters opera theaters in
I mean, the
Germany.
States, what is it, 25 you could maybe work at most?
I think maybe there's 50 in all of North America.
Yeah. Okay, in all of North America.
All of North America. Because not every state has an opera.
No.
I mean, you could argue like some do, but they're not really full time. You know, I mean, like, okay, you go to Nevada. I think there is like a Reno opera, and California has a couple.
Sure.
You know, New York has a few kind of thing, but
it's just too bad that the New York City Opera closed. God, that was a great company.
Yeah.
When we were working there, they were doing 14, 12 productions a season every year.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It was like second largest company in terms of production size in the country.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
by
true.
far. I mean, it's always been like, they did more than San Francisco, and I would say it was the second biggest probably. They did more than San Francisco, more than Chicago, more than Houston, more than Seattle. Most of those companies are doing eight max,
That's true.
Even back then. So
and they were sharing their stage with the New York City Ballet.
Right.
So essentially they were only getting like half a season.
Yeah.
And still able to, mount so many productions. Yeah, it was amazing.
Great house. The orchestra still kind of exists. The orchestra is more or less the same orchestra that plays for the ballet still. And there's somebody that worked in the artistic offices when we were there with Robin Thompson. Can't think of his name at the moment. Was it Jeremy something? Lovely, lovely gentleman. He's in charge of artistic music decisions for the ballet there. We keep in touch a bit. And so I remember 3 or 4 years ago I was in town, and so I stopped by to see him, and he said, "Well, come down into the house for a few minutes," and we listened to a rehearsal for a few minutes, and then he come down and say hello. And so we saw a few musicians I recognized, and they recognized me. It was amazing. I was like, wow, it's been a while.
Cool,
but amazing.
Cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a nice theater. It's a really nice theater. We're lucky we had it when we were there. I'm so glad.
Yeah. Yeah, we did have that. I think I was there 7 seasons. I was part of 7 seasons in one capacity or another.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just got to cover, but that's work, and you live in New York. It's work.
A name. It's important. Do you remember Dana Beth Miller?
Yes.
She's fun.
Yeah.
She's a great singer. Wow.
She's done some things at Deutsche Oper.
Yeah, of course. We used to work together there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she had some kind of contract there, right?
She was in some kind of contract there. Yes.
Yeah.
And with some flexibility too. But she's a great singer. She's really a very like a contralto or something now. She figured that out in the last years. Yeah. Yeah. She changed. She moved. She changed. She's a good old friend of mine because she's from Dallas. I'm from Houston. We worked at Dallas Opera together a few times, and
cool.
Yeah, I think she sang Third Woman or something with me in Zauberflute.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, it's too bad, but we. I don't think you've been in a production that I conducted. Of course, you haven't been in a production I conducted. We'd remember that.
Well, recently, anyway.
Yes.
I mean, at City Opera, I think you were working on some stuff, so I think we worked on some stuff together. But
that was a great. I love that place. Anyway, New York City days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to include some of the tracks that we talked about from your album. I don't know if Spotify will let me do that.
You don't think so?
I don't know.
I think they would.
Okay.
I don't think they'd have any problem.
Would you prefer that I sort of break the conversation and then insert that, or what I did with Clay Hilly was here. He's a Heldon tenor working at
Clay
Hilly.
Okay.
He's coming up.
Okay.
He's coming up.
Yeah.
Well, you can check my podcast. So what I did with him
I was getting confused with somebody else. Okay.
Well, what's interesting with him is he didn't start a tenor. He was actually a piano major.
Wow.
So, but of course that's helped him now. I mean, he learns music so fast because he can play it and sing it.
Sure.
So he comes in the door, sits right down at the piano, and before I can even get the mic over there to start recording him, and I have a direct feed from the piano into my GarageBand. He starts playing and singing, and he did Vesti la Juba, and then he did Winterstürme from Die Walküre.
Wow.
And then he played, this little interlude, Act 4 of Bohème. Da-dee-da-da-da, da-dee-da-dee-da-da.
Sure.
It's Mimi is asleep. She's waking up.
Right.
He played
before
that.
it gets really sad. Yes.
Yeah. So what I did was, instead of like breaking our conversation to put it in there, I like labeled it as sort of bonus content.
Yes.
And then I made that like a separate thing that somebody can click on and then just hear the music. I mean, of course, I'm going to put the link in to your album.
Sure.
So people should definitely check
Well, it's your choice.
that.
If you wanted, you could even put, like, for instance, I don't know if this is a good idea. You would know.
Yeah.
But the cabaletta, the last 2 minutes of the Stravinsky aria,
Mm-hmm.
if you wanted to insert it all together, you could. If you wanted, whatever you like.
Yeah.
But sure, it'd be great if you include the album Transatlantic, the Berlin Academy of American Music.
Good that you mentioned the name. Transatlantic Berlin Academy of American Music.
Yes.
Yeah. Bam.
Bam. Yeah, it's a good acronym. And the orchestras, I mean, it's amazing. The orchestras were top players. So
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
the Stravinsky Dumbarton Oaks is really crisp and clear.
Get up on your mic there a little bit.
Yeah, the sound in that piece is the Stravinsky Dumbarton Oaks is really crisp and very clear and fresh kind of sound in that great studio Teldex.
Mm-hmm.
And Stathis Karapanos is amazing in this Takamitsu work toward the C2.
Yeah, he's something special, isn't he?
Oh, he's big talent.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Berlin Philharmonic Marie-Pierre Langlemay is the harpist playing with him.
Great.
And that. And it's a very Debussy type of work. It's very La Mer in a certain sense. Beautiful piece. And it's amazing these musicians could pull that off. So I think, and I'm not trying to brag, I still am amazed that it came off so well. And the Dorman piece is a lovely piece with also featuring another Berlin Philharmonic musician, this American concertmaster, Noah Bendix Bagley.
Okay.
He's the American concertmaster of the Philharmonic here in town.
Cool.
Great guy, really stylish player, really amazing player, and with Chen Rice singing and Stathis playing the flute and percussion and piano as well. And the No Word from Tom, I think, is just quite a sparkling piece.
Yeah, that got a nice review as well. Somebody mentioned how flawless and what did they say? Fluidly elegant or something like that. They described it.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's just beautiful.
We got another review about it from a French magazine just a few days ago, and then the Aaron Copland is just fabulous. I think it's really. I can tell you love that piece, but it's a gorgeous piece. It's it's very famous. What's interesting about the Aaron Copland Appalachian Spring is that the suite is in the States. Boozy and Hawks told me, who we rent the music from, the publisher told me here in town, they said, in the States, that was the most rented piece during the pandemic.
Interesting.
Like the first year and a half of the pandemic.
Interesting.
The most, because it's 13 instruments. People could figure a way to do it distanced. You could do it with a small group, safety, et cetera, et cetera. But in Europe, of course, it's not at all the most rented piece. And
right.
But what I find is interesting is that European audiences know of it. Mm-hmm. Know the name, know the title. Mm-hmm. They know it's a famous piece. They don't know it.
Right.
They don't know it at all.
Interesting.
And the musicians in my orchestra here, in our orchestra, the Berlin Academy, lots of them hadn't played it before. And they're like, wow, that's an amazing piece. I didn't know when we were set out to recording this piece that this was such a masterpiece.
Interesting.
And what I think it's interesting to say from an American standpoint is that, and it's true, it's not just an American masterpiece, it's a 20th century masterpiece. It's very fresh. Aaron Copland was Nadia Boulanger's most prized student of all time.
Right.
And she had hundreds of students.
Right.
He was the most prized, and he met Stravinsky there in the class in Paris in the early 20s. And Stravinsky and him were good friends. And you can imagine, you can listen to, I think you listen to Aaron Copland's music, so many pieces after Stravinsky, you can hear the influence and the clarity and the structure and especially the mixed meter ideas and combinations are so fascinating. And without Stravinsky, John Adams, Aaron Copland, many others just wouldn't exist the same. It wouldn't be the same sound world.
Yeah. I always love music that has like a narrative. That's what draws me to Aaron Copland, he can describe things so well musically. Okay, it's called Appalachian Spring, so what do you think it's about,
Yeah.
But then you listen to it and it's like, oh, yeah, I see that. Like, you listen to the music and you actually get a picture in your head. you know, and I love music like that.
Oh yeah, it's a
You know?
spectacular piece.
My favorite composer of all time is Beethoven, because I think he was the master at that. I when I listen to Beethoven, I hear the form and I hear the technicality with which he wrote. But anybody can write with form and technicality. What I think Beethoven did better than, you know, like other composers of his time or ones that came right before him, what launched him to the next plateau is that he always somehow connected it with something in his life, some thought that he had, some idea. And that's not something that I know. That's only something that I feel.
Right.
And I think when you feel something from music, that's the point.
That's exactly the point.
You know what I mean?
Yes. That I will leave one idea of our album that I think my favorite part of Appalachian Spring is the prayer at the end. After the big simple gifts, big melodies revealed and spelled out and grandly so, and then it dies down and it whittles down to this beautiful prayer theme with just strings. The end of the piece, like 2.5, 3 minutes before the end of the piece, and that is just the most spectacular, simple, and most beautifully harmonized and orchestrated bit of music for the last leading to the end of the piece. But I mean, and honestly, that's one of the things that I found. I found this piece. I only started to know of this piece in high school years, and in that prayer there is one of the things that just struck me so. It was so touching, you know. That's one of the pieces that made me say I have to study music in college. Simple as that. I have to go to college, and I can't become an engineer. I got to work on music, you know.
Yeah. Once you've been touched like that,
yeah,
there's sort of no going back, huh?
That's right. So and somehow it's amazing to me that it's kind of a dream come true that we were able to bring that piece and that moment to life as well as we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems like a good place to wrap it up. What do you think?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much.
Man, this has been solid gold. I'm
Pleasure.
so glad. I hope you can come back.
Yeah, we should do that sometime.
I think maybe I touched three of the ideas that I had here.
I knew we wouldn't have any hard time talking at all. Not even a bit.
So beg you on my knees to come back.
Yeah,
man.
I'd love to. We'll do it again for sure. Yeah, I'll come with more time and we'll have there's plenty to drink here. So Thank you so much. It's a big pleasure to chat with you today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Garrett. All right, everybody. Be good to each other. Check out Garrett's album Transatlantic with the Berlin Academy of American Music. Take care, everybody.